Hi everyone. Welcome back to my channel. That's so funny to say. I don't know if that's going to be part of my intro, but I'm testing it out. Welcome back to my channel. Today we will be focusing on networking. And really the inspiration for this video is just coming off of an incredible time at CultureCon. If you have been on any of my social media platforms, you have seen me posting about it because I just have so much incredible content. And really, I think the energy in my content just comes from the energy that I got from the experience. Taking the initiative to go to CultureCon, that was my first CultureCon. It reminded me the value of intentional networking. Back up. So you're probably thinking to yourself, why should I listen about networking from you? Let me give you some background. I went to school in DC and I studied international affairs. There, I actually was the professional development chair of a professional foreign service sorority. It is as nerdy as it sounds, but that being said, I worked very closely with our Office of Career Development to provide networking opportunities, resume reviews, um, like different internship opportunities. I was very involved in professional development from a young age. And that organization is actually where I learned about Princeton in Africa. And if you're unfamiliar with my story, I was a Princeton in Africa fellow in 2019 to 2020 in Eswatini. And that is where I started my photography journey. And obviously 2020 is when the pandemic started. So when I was evacuated, that is when I relocated to New York. So I really do see each step of my journey as so important to my development as a person, but also my professional development. Also, like I just said, I moved to New York in June 2020, literally the height of the pandemic. At that point, I had just started my photography journey, but it was really on my iPhone. I had never stepped foot into a studio. I didn't even know I liked film photography at that point. And since then, I have built my New York creative community from scratch. So I'm speaking about this as someone who has done professional development in more of a traditional sense in university and in my 9 to 5, but also someone who has really expanded my network creatively as well. So before I get into my tips, I really want to highlight the value that I've gained from networking over the years. Number one, I have gained cheerleaders. This is invaluable. Community is invaluable. Everything starts with you. It's you against you. You should always be making progress against your past self. But that being said, you cannot make progress alone. You can only get so far alone. The relationships around you reflect the time that you've invested in them. They're able to send you opportunities of interest because they know you. There are going to be days that you feel down. There are going to be days that you don't have confidence in yourself. And so whether people are active cheerleaders, like they are actively, sending you motivation, or there are mentors that you connect with, and when you tell them your doubts, they're able to remind you of how far you've come. Having cheerleaders in your circle is key. Two, I have increased my knowledge. It's important to get familiar with the space that you want to succeed in, because as you get closer to the top, the cone, it narrows, and it's actually very few people, right? The best foundation for relationships is knowledge. Do you know what you're talking about? I saw a journalist that I was very familiar with at an event over the summer. And I went up to her and I said, just so you know, I love your work. I love what you're doing in this space. But beyond that, I didn't really know what else to say to her. And I think that's okay. You're not going to be perfect, but I think if you get clear on where you want to go, then you will know what to say when you encounter the people that you admire most. Having knowledge of an industry, having knowledge of the heavy hitters in that industry, who are the people that you're looking up to? Who are the people that are being listened to? And that's something I'm reflecting on actively as I create. I'm a multifaceted creator, right? I am a writer, I am a photographer, I am now a content creator, and I am kind of trying to figure out like what path do I want to chart. But if you're someone who is more clear on your path, let's say, I want to be a portrait photographer in the fashion space. That is quite specific. So look at the people who are at the top of their game in that space and think about, if I had face-to-face time with this person, what would I say to them? What advice would I want from them? And when you meet them, you don't have to immediately like ask them something to extract from them, but I think you will have thought about it, that when you have that once in a lifetime opportunity, you can move about that opportunity with intention. There's that quote, people will forget what you say, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. In order to make people feel valued, you have to know why you value them. Oh my gosh. I'm kind of like free flowing at this point, but there was actually a thread that I saw about New York Fashion Week. I think this year people have really been complaining that people just want to be seen at New York Fashion Week, but they don't even know by who. There's always going to be big names, big brands, but you have to get clear on what you value, who you value, and why. And then three, this kind of bleeds into knowledge, but know who the heavy hitters are in your line of work. If you're a photographer, I mean, photography is such a broad spectrum. The more you get to know yourself through your time alone and you know what you want to specialize in, you will start to see the same names come up. You will start to see the same photographers commissioned for the same type of work across outlets, across brands. Pay attention to who's getting commissioned. Pay attention to whose work you like. Think about why you like that work. If that person is your role model, do they have a Substack? Do they blog? Do they create content? Whatever they create, try to follow and support them. The same way that you want people to support you, you should be supporting the heavy hitters in your industry that inspire you. So, with that, let's get into tips for networking. Number one, have your pitch ready. Really, networking, as I will continue saying throughout this video, networking is about relationships. You only have so much face time with people at different events. When you are at these events, you need to be intentional with what experience you want to curate for people. The way that I pitch myself in a nonprofit setting is going to be very different from the way that I pitch myself as a photographer or content creator. The experiences and the strengths that I highlight about myself are going to be different because they're going to be tailored to different opportunities. Example, in the nonprofit space, my background is actually in grant writing. So as a grant writer, in order to write something that appeals to someone, I would have to do extensive research. So let's say I'm writing to the US government, for instance. Government grants have very strict requirements. So it doesn't matter if my project fits exactly what they want or what they've described that they want for this grant. If I didn't follow their requirements, they're literally giving me the blueprint to get the money. If I don't follow their requirements, I will not get that money. It's going to be certain situations in which people are literally giving you the blueprint. Listen and follow so that you can get what you need to get. In the creative space, I am very excited to give this example. So over the summer, I actually went to a creative networking event in Brooklyn by 42 Creative. It is a Black women-owned agency, African women-owned agency at that. I've seen their work on social media throughout the years, but I've never had the opportunity to attend one of their events. So even though I live in Manhattan on a weeknight, I took the initiative to cross that bridge and to go to this event because I knew that it would be convening people who share my values, value creativity, they value African advancement, and they value entrepreneurship. And I met really cool people, but it was in the last minutes of my time there that I created one of my most important relationships this year. As I was standing literally at the door with actually someone I connected with too. Oh my God. Okay. Shout out to my friend, Ziana. She was shooting that event that night and we had been emailing in the past about different jobs. That was the first time that we met in person and actually connected. And she ended up shooting CultureCon. I ended up getting content of her shooting CultureCon. That being said, I was talking with my friend Ziana at the door. And something happened where I think someone knew her and interrupted the conversation. And the person that person was with, we look at each other and we're like, okay, well, our friends are talking. Hi. And it turned out he was Ethiopian. And I was like, oh, okay, my name's Mikal. I'm Eritrean. So I tell him, I'm a photographer. This is the photo project I'm working on. And he took a strong interest. Some people, they'll just be like, oh, that's cool. No, he was interested and he was asking me a lot of questions about it. He's like, well, do you have a brand identity for this project? And I was like, no. I did the project and now I'm just pitching it kind of cold turkey. I created a very novice pitch deck on Canva, solo dolo. It's not the best. After hearing me talk about my project, he said, I'm a designer and I'd be really interested in taking this on pro bono. I tried to create a brand identity on my own, but I didn't know how to get what I envisioned. I didn't know how to manifest it into the physical world. What he created, is so beautiful. What he created literally embodies what I want people to feel. Like the font, the colors, the logo he created for me, because I took that small window of time to pitch my project to him. And I pitched my project to him not knowing that he could really provide value to it. I pitched it to him just to raise awareness of my project. So have your pitch ready. Always be prepared to shoot your shot. Number 2 is know the language of the people that you want to connect with. I'm going to give a very, very clear example. In the nonprofit sector, there is so much jargon. Like this world is just filled with jargon. And even between countries, that jargon differs. For example, in the United States, what we would call a nonprofit organization, that same organization would be called a charity in the United Kingdom. And that is like the correct term in the United Kingdom. But if you're familiar with this sector in the United States, if you call a nonprofit a charity, that has a negative connotation because of the conversations that we've had in this space. For me personally, I can say that I don't call nonprofit organizations charities because that language has a power dynamic to it, that I'm giving something of charitable value. I am providing a charitable donation rather than if you use the language of this is a nonprofit organization, you can then use the language that I am partnering with this organization to benefit X community or to advance X cause. So the language that you use is so important because it really determines who you're able to connect with. Understand language and understand the value it brings to different conversations. I also wanted to highlight from CultureCon, Will Tyler James. I also want to double check if that's his name because he has like 3 first names and I've been getting them wrong. So Tyler James Williams, who plays Gregory on Abbott Elementary, actually kind of alluded to this. During his talk with Imani Ellis on the culture stage at CultureCon, he talked about basically how a lot of Black artists are introverted. And he actually prefers to network or connect with introverted artists because he understands that if you spend time alone, then you're taking time to intentionally think about things differently. And I really wanted to highlight that because if you're taking the time to think about things differently, that will show in your conversations with other people. When I say know the language, I'm not saying just learn the jargon and throw it at people and they're going to think that you know what you're talking about. You can't fake authenticity. When you take the time to understand your craft, your value, what you bring to the spaces that you want to bring in or spaces you want to be in, but also how the space currently exists and the gaps that currently exist, the problems that are currently being discussed. These are things that you can only learn by studying and by studying over a period of time. That's why time is so valuable. The amount of time someone has been in a space is valuable. That's not the end all be all, right? Like I am a new content creator. I am new in this space. I am learning a lot right now. And I know I have so much more to learn. And I don't think that starting now determines the level of success that I can achieve. But what I will say is that when I meet people who've been doing content creation for 10 years, for instance, I understand that they have knowledge that they can only have gained through their experience in the space doing it and also studying it and perfecting their craft. So when I say know the language, it's really about gaining that knowledge, like kind of going back to what I've gained from networking. Gain the knowledge so that you can talk about things with expertise, so that you can talk about things confidently. When you are so familiar with the space and when you're familiar with the language, you will know how to masterfully use that language at the right moments to evoke a specific emotion or to show someone, hey, I hear you, and to make them feel heard. That makes a big difference in how you're able to connect with people. My third and final tip. Know that relationships take time. Timing is everything, and everyone has their own timing. When I moved to New York City, I was interested in transitioning to the corporate sector. That was not an easy transition whatsoever. And being from the nonprofit sector, if you're familiar, we don't exactly have the most resources. That is something that became abundantly clear to me when I was in Eswatini. I was working with a community-based clinic. And even though that work was so enriching and I would not have traded that experience for anything, I became acutely aware that people my age, 22 years old, were gaining a lot of connections at these big companies at an early age. And I was not getting those same connections. When I moved to New York City by force because of the pandemic, I was interested in moving to corporate to get more networking experiences, and also, to increase my salary so I had more options, so I had more time and literal money to invest in my creative pursuits. How did I transition to the corporate sector? I networked. I did not know what I wanted to do in corporate America, and it felt uncomfortable to even think about that transition. But what I started to do is I just started to go on LinkedIn. I started looking at the companies that I was interested in. And I think at the time, it's like huge companies. I was looking at like Apple and Etsy. I couldn't even tell you what companies I was looking at, but just to give you an idea, like big companies. So I was like, okay, how can I be in corporate and still somehow be connected to the nonprofit sector? And through my research, through a lot of research, I think it was after 3 months of research, that's when I came across the concept of corporate social responsibility. And I was like, wow, like that makes sense. Like corporations do give away money. Who manages that process? I started reaching out to folks who were in these types of roles, and a lot of the time, these people did not respond to me. You can't take that personally. When people are successful, they are busy doing what they're doing. They're busy doing what caused you to be inspired to want to reach out to them in the first place. You can't feel entitled to someone's time, especially if they're a public figure, they're busy. So, what I would recommend is reach out to a ton of people. Let's say you reach out to 30 people. If one person responds, hey, you got a response. And if you are able to get time on their calendar for a call or for a coffee, you better come prepared. Another example of relationships taking time is I went to visit my cousin in Montreal last summer. I do have a Canadian cousin. He likes to remind me that I'm his American cousin. I'm actually going to link his Instagram below too, because he is a fantastic photographer, and he actually published his first comic book called Winta, which is a common Eritrean name. So shout out to Abel. Check out his book. But I went to visit my cousin Abel in Montreal, and he introduced me to the founder of an organization called Never Was Average, which is founded by Joanna and Harry, two Montreal-based artists. So Never Was Average is a creative agency that really focuses on elevating underrepresented voices in Canada. With Joanna, we were able to collaborate and do a fun photo shoot with other creatives. And then over the last year, I've kept in touch with Joanna on an interpersonal level. I could have easily just said, oh, that's Abel's friend. She's really cool. I met her. Now we follow each other on Instagram. End of story. But over the last year, I've made it a point to support her work. I always reach out to her because I really admire what she's doing in Canada. And I don't do that with the intention of gaining something from her. I do that out of pure admiration and respect for what she's doing. Fast forward, over the summer, she sent me a Polaroid portrait opportunity with a photographer named Vonnie Lord. Vonnie Lord is an incredible Polaroid photographer. I think general film photographer, but right now her primary focus is shooting on Polaroid. So because Joanna thought about me, knew I was in New York, knew Vonnie was offering these portraits in New York, she sent that opportunity to me. The portrait sessions cost money, but I looked at her work and I thought, this girl knows how to shoot. Like if I want a good portrait and if I want to capture myself at, this important stage in life. At the time, I had just turned 27 over the summer. I was just about to move back to Harlem into my own apartment for the first time in 4 years. I really wanted to capture that moment. The day after I moved to Harlem, I took the train all the way to Brooklyn, all the way down there to Brooklyn. And I took my portraits with her. And that's actually the profile picture that I have now. If you're looking at any social media channel right now with my dice earrings, that is the portrait that Vonnie took of me. And I love these portraits so much. As a photographer, I'm very critical of how I'm captured, and I just really love how she captured me. So I connect with Vonnie, we're vibing, and I actually ended up going to an exhibit that she had in Brooklyn. Mind you, I've only been exposed to this photographer because I decided to keep in touch with my cousin's friend in Canada. I ended up going to her exhibit in Brooklyn, and her exhibit was put on by Monad, which is a creative agency here in New York. I had never heard of them before, but through Vonnie's exhibit, I became exposed to them. I started following them on Instagram, And I reposted a picture that I took of Vani on film in front of her portraits. And from posting that and tagging them, their account followed me. So at this point, it's like end of August, we just started following each other. And then in September, fast forward to September, I see that they have an open call for an all-female exhibit here in New York City. Like you cannot orchestrate relationships. Relationships unfold with time, and the relationships that are meant for you will find you. Again, going back to loving being on your own, if you love yourself and you know what you want to pursue and you're pursuing what you want with reckless abandon, like you are not letting anything or anyone stop you, then you will find people who not only support you, but who understand you and who see you. At the end of the day, this is all storytelling. What story are you telling yourself about yourself? What beliefs do you have about yourself? Do you believe that you have value? Do you believe that you are bringing value to the spaces that you want to be in? If you don't believe that, think about why that is. Are you being too hard on yourself? Are you not working hard enough? That is up for you to think about and to determine for yourself, because you need to see the value in yourself before others see the value in you. The way you present yourself, that is something that is 100% up to you. You decide the story that you tell yourself, which impacts the story that you tell other people. You cannot fake authenticity. I guess you can fake it till you make it, but true confidence and true belief in yourself shines through everything. You can face so much rejection, especially in New York. I can tell you, I've faced so much rejection. I've faced so much disrespect as a female artist, and you can't let that impact you. Your self-love, your self-confidence has to be at the top of its game always, always. You have to know how to ground yourself, and you have to know what story that you want to communicate about yourself to others, and decide how you want to connect with others. Even though relationships are a two-way street, you can't control other people. You can only control yourself. So if you're not showing up the way that you want to in certain spaces, think about why that is. Write down, if I were to introduce myself to a new person right now, what would I say? You can even put that in ChatGPT and tell ChatGPT, hey, here are my qualities. Write an intro for me if I met my favorite photographer. You could even insert the photographer's name. Honestly, AI is incredible. Let me say that's actually a good exercise. I'm gonna challenge people. If you are nervous to introduce yourself to someone, write down what you think your strengths are. Write down what industry or space that you want to break into. Put that in ChatGPT and let ChatGPT create an introduction for you. And then you can tailor it as you want. Hopefully you do. You add some of your own personality and language in there. But get intentional about how you introduce yourself, how you want to show up in different spaces. Because I promise you, once you see your value and once you decide how you want to show up and how you want to be received, your relationships will be transformed. The earlier that you think about how you want to show up in a space, and the more you start practicing it, the more you will show up as the person that you want to be. Thank y'all for watching. I hope you gained something from today's video. Please comment if any of these tips resonated, and I'll see y'all next time.